Good evening and welcome to our information evening on the Ministry of Lay Pastoral Leaders. Thank you for joining us this evening. So the purpose of our evening this evening is to let you know a little bit more about this new ministry that's beginning here in the diocese. And really for you to be clear on what is entailed, to have a sense of what it is you're encouraging people to maybe respond to the invitation of, and also of letting people in your community know that this is how our diocese will look into the future. This evening, I'm joined by Father Ger Godley, who will explore the context in which this new ministry is being launched, and by Bishop Ray, who will conclude the evening and draw it to a close. I will speak in the middle in terms of exploring what the ministry is and what it might look like in your parish or pastoral area. Just before we begin, some housekeeping. So in the middle of your screen, down the bottom, generally speaking, you'll have a Q&A button or a chat button. If you'd like to put a question into us at any stage, please feel free to do so. And we will explore those questions later on in the evening. So now, without further ado, I'll hand you over to Father Ger Godley. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Francis. I'm just going to look at why are we establishing this ministry here in the Diocese of Kerry. When I'm travelling around the diocese at various area pastoral council meetings or gatherings of parish pastoral councils, people often express concerns about the future of the church, the future of their parishes. They're concerned about such things as the absence of people below 50 engaging with the church. Also, they're concerned about the low attendance at Mass, at regular Mass. They're also concerned about the fact that there are fewer vocations to the priesthood, and also that we have an increased number of parishes in the diocese that no longer have a resident priest, that they are ministered to by the priests within the pastoral area. To understand why we are establishing this new ministry here in the diocese, I'm going to begin first just by looking at what is the role of the church? Why does it exist? The church exists in order to introduce people to Jesus Christ. It is not about a place. It is not about fulfilling obligations. It is not only just about supplying the sacraments. It's not about programs or services. It's about coming to know the person of Jesus and acting in a Jesus-like way. To make sense of where we are as a church at this time, it's necessary to realize that there are different understandings of church. There is a strong sense of being between times at the moment. We find ourselves situated between an older and a newer understanding of church. Older understanding of church. It's very much a model of church which many of us are familiar with in our parish, where the priest was very much at the center of the life of the parish. And the priest took responsibility for a lot of the ministries in the parish, also even things like administration, and also things like maintenance and managing schools. And then people were willing to help the priest whenever the priest asked for help. Now, a newer understanding of church has developed particularly since Vatican II. The revolution of Vatican II was a shift from a clerical church to a church where all the baptized share their gifts. So today, the church is understood more as a community, as a faith community. And for a faith community to be vibrant, all its members must be active. The priest does not have the sole responsibility for the life of the community. The carrying of the mission of Jesus is the responsibility of all the baptized, both the people and the priests, working together in partnership. I suppose the word we use for that is co-responsibility. And co-responsibility recognizes the values and gifts and talents of all the people. It encourages their full and active participation in the life of the community. In responding to the various challenges faced by the church over the years, the diocese has been exploring a new way forward for some time. In the diocese, over the years, we have established ministry groups, various parish committees, such as parish pastoral councils, liturgy groups, finance committees. Also, we've had the establishment of the pastoral team to support the work of the various ministry groups. We've had formation programs. Also, we've over the years developed various pastoral plans. And in recent times, we've had the development of the pastoral areas. To further support parishes and pastoral areas, we're now establishing the Ministry of Lay Pastoral Leader. And the Lay Pastoral Leader, along with the clergy in the pastoral area, will form a team and together will support the pastoral ministry within the parishes of the pastoral area.
To hear a little bit more about this ministry of the Lay Pastoral Leader, we might just look at the screen here ahead of us. Okay, so we're talking about a volunteer ministry. Most of our ministries in church are volunteers. It's something that we give of ourselves as lay people in terms of what are the gifts, what's the time commitment, what are the treasures that we have that we can share with our community for the good of all. And this leadership role is one that is new to us here in the diocese. So the role of this person is to coordinate and take responsibility for a particular aspect of ministry in response to local needs. So this person, and really we're hoping that there'll be a few of these people in each of our pastoral areas, will work with the clergy in that pastoral area, the priests and deacons, to ensure that all that is good about parish is happening. So, for example, one of the roles a lay pastoral leader might take up might be the coordination of faith development. So, over the years, we've had Lenten talks, or we might have a mission in the local parish. We might have something on in November to support those who are bereaved. So this person might ensure that that happens throughout the pastoral area. Or, as Ger mentioned, we would have a real concern for children as they grow into the experience of receiving the sacraments, and also for their parents, that their parents are supported to be able to bring their children along in the faith. So this person or these people might, in a pastoral area, take on the coordination of that whole area of work, between the connection with the schools, the celebration of the sacraments, something for the parents, and some ways for the children to come to know parish life in our diocese. Another area that might be explored, depending on what your pastoral area sees are the urgent needs, might be the whole area of liturgy. One of the ministries we've had since the very earliest times of lay ministry here in the diocese would be the ministry of the Eucharistic minister. Back in 1983, that was first established, and ministers of the word came just around the same time. So they need to be supported, they need training, they need encouragement, they need evenings of renewal so that it doesn't become a dead ministry. But alongside that, we have servers, we have sacristans, we've people who do the counting and the collecting, we've liturgy groups, we've music groups, we've choirs. So who is to be there in the future to support them, to encourage, to ensure that actually all the parishes and all the churches in our own local area have a feeling of, be it Lent at the moment, or Advent, Christmas or Easter, or all the other moments that are special to us during the year. So that's the role of the lay pastoral leader. And then I suppose people coming forward for this ministry will bring their own gifts and talents. They'll bring the experience from their own working life, and they'll also get an opportunity for further formation. So if I was to explore a bit with you what that will look like, we're talking about a chance for personal and spiritual development. So that, as Ger said, really to be a Christian is to be someone called by Christ and engaged with the person of Jesus Christ. So we need time to grow that understanding in ourselves. It is to be involved in ministry. So from very early on in this training process, there will be an engagement at your local area. It's getting involved there among the people with whom you'll be working into the future. There'll be an opportunity to have some theological formation. I suppose for many people, they may not have done so much formation since they were in school, but there's a need maybe to grow our understanding, as Ger said, of a church that now is, a church that maybe wasn't there when we were younger. To grow our understanding of Jesus now that we are older and no longer children at school. To grow our understanding of prayer, of ministry, and the context in which we're ministering today. A world that is very, very different to perhaps the worlds in which we grew up. And then finally, that whole area of leadership. It takes training and it takes learning to become a leader, someone who can empower and encourage and bring people with us as we move together. Some famous person, and I don't know who, once said, you cannot be a Christian alone. You can only be a Christian in community. So this ministry is about leadership. It's about enabling different people in your community to participate more fully in the life of the church. So there will be that training around leadership, teamwork, and how to animate and encourage groups. So if you're aware of somebody that you think might be drawn to this ministry, or if you yourself want to explore it further so that you can tell people about it, the first place you might go to is our diocesan website. And on the diocesan website, under training programs, you'll find all about this ministry. And then you might say, okay, there might be people who are interested, but they don't want to commit themselves yet. So the next step is to fill in one of our expression of interests. It's just asking you why you're interested, what are your thoughts, what sort of training you've done prior to this, maybe what are the skills and gifts you feel that you're bringing to this. And that's just an opportunity maybe for you to reflect, or for somebody who's interested in this ministry to reflect on the ministry, and then to say, okay, this is what I think I might be interested, or this is what I think I might be bringing to it. And there's no commitment, it's just simply an expression of interest. And then we'll get back in touch with you with regard to that. Then in May, we will have information evenings, and that's an opportunity for those who've expressed interest to come together, to hear a little bit more about the ministry, to explore a little bit further what it would mean in terms of their own commitment. And again, there's no commitment, you haven't signed yourself over at that stage at all. And then post those evenings, there'll be an opportunity for an orientation day. And that's really saying, okay, yeah, I want to know, is this for me at this time? And I want to spend a little bit of time exploring that with people. So that's the way it'll flow through for us as a diocese in terms of our planning. So what am I asking of you, particularly who are on here tonight? I'm asking you to tell people about this ministry so that people know that we are having a new ministry here in the diocese. It's a volunteer ministry, and it's a way for people to get involved who might feel that they are called to leadership. We're going to launch it on Sunday, April 3rd. So on that day, there'll be brochures that will have been sent to your parishes. So we're asking you to share those brochures with people. And again, it's getting people more familiar with the idea of this new ministry in the diocese. And it's also maybe handing the brochure to people that might feel that they would be drawn to this ministry. They'd be attracted by this, that they'd have something to bring to this. We'll also send homily notes and a prayer of the faithful that you might use on that day. There'll be a piece for your newsletters that people are familiar with this new ministry. And there'll also be a piece on horizons. So that's how it will flow from here. So maybe just, I'm going to go back so that we hear maybe some of the questions that you might have. Anything that you feel, gosh, you said this, but I'd like to know a little bit more. And maybe just one thing that underlies all of this. This is the work of the Spirit. If it's not the work of the Spirit, it won't work. So as Ger said, what we've been trying to do is listen to what has been said in parishes and pastoral areas, to listen to the spirit of our time, to listen to the spirit of Pope Francis and what Pope Francis says the Spirit is saying to us at the moment. And I'll just conclude with this bit. He says we need lay people who are formed well, animated by a clear and sincere faith, whose lives have been touched by a personal and merciful encounter with the person and love of Jesus Christ. We need lay people with a vision of the future. So I see we already have some questions in. So one of the questions that has come in already is asking, what age people? I think we're open to any age. I think it's more about being the kind of person who can bring leadership to something, somebody who has time to give to this ministry, because we're envisaging maybe 3 or 4 hours in the week. Depending on the kind of ministry you're in, it might have more energy at certain times of the year than at other times of the year. So let age not be a barrier if you have energy, commitment, and time for it. And another question that's into us here, are female lay people included? They absolutely are. I wouldn't be promoting it if female lay people were not included. I suppose in some senses, it has similarities to the role of the deacon in terms of, we're talking about people who can give voluntarily a couple of hours in the week to enable pastoral life to its fullest in our parishes. So lay people, all men and women are invited. Now, there's another question in here in terms of training. The training will take place over 2 years, but we're asking people to give a commitment of 5 years so that the training is part of the commitment and then that you'll have time to kind of grow into your role and really spread the wisdom and the experience you've gained from the training over those 5 years. So now I might come to you, Bishop Ray.
The brochure covers a lot. It puts it together. In writing the forward to it, one part of the page, I spoke of family, that maybe family is the best image for church. We call God our Father. We see Christ as our brother. We're sisters and brothers in Christ. And, we've always known family comes in all shapes and sizes. Oh, they're very different. Sunday morning on radio, the guest was a lady and her brother. And the question was, her husband, a Mayo hurler, has motor neuron disease and it's advancing over the last 3 years. And speaking about that's a family, and their 2 children are now, is it 7 and 10 and 11 maybe, and how they have grown up with 3 or 4 years of motor neuron. The younger one barely remembers anything else. We also have families where there's widows, and if families adjust, they're a full family, they're a full home, that they're equal families and they adjust. Think again of the family, which is a significant number around, of where one of the children has severe disabilities that needs round-the-clock attention. That's family life too, and that's the variety of family. You can name so many more. You can name single-parent families and all sorts of families. Church, as when you talk about the church and dioceses and parishes, there's all sorts all over the world. In the Philippines, the average number of people per priest is 1 in 10,000. If we had that, we just have 14 priests. Now, 30 years ago, I'm sure we had well over 100 priests. We had a priest for every 1,000 pretty much. I heard some priests mention in recent days that in the parish in Africa, he had 40 outstations, 40 different communities that he visited on a 6-week rota. He got round them all. So that church is different, and it's a family type situation. That in Ireland, the pendulum has swung from 50, 60 years ago, having huge numbers of priests and religious. Huge numbers of religious involved in education and involved in health. Huge numbers of priests of diocesan and religious. All the missions, all the missionary congregations. You know, that was a time of plenty. You know, and in the image of Joseph in Egypt, you could say we're almost in a time of famine now. You know, we have maybe around the 45 or 47 priests serving in our 53 parishes. You know, the only place we have curates is the only place we have more than one priest, because they're no longer really curates. It's teams of priests, and that's Killarney and the two parishes in Tralee. You know, so we've changed, and it's changing further. So if we see the parish as a family, if we see the church as a family, under God our Father, a family united in Christ, you know, a family in a sense created as a family by baptism. You know that we were one type of parish when we had an abundance of priests and religious. We're a different type of parish, different type of family. Now that we have almost zero religious, you know, in full-time work, and our priests are of a good age. You know, so that as a family we have to cope. You know, the family looks after itself. It's not the nature of a house, whether a parent has left home or whether a parent has died or whether someone is seriously ill. So I think it's a good image. You know, and what are the basics of being a family as a church? The basics are worship and the sacrament. Sacraments, the basics are, and very basic, I suppose it's equivalent of rearing of children in ordinary in family, you know, handing on the faith to a next generation to be born. You know, and parallel to that, but separate from it, is sharing faith with other adults. And that's something maybe we've never done much because it didn't have to be done, you know, reaching out to those around us. You know, and equally caring for needs. You know, the needs of individual members of the parish family, of the diocesan family. You know, and I suppose most fundamentally, you know, what's the most fundamentally about a family is to live together, to share their lives. That people aren't lonely, people aren't living totally as individuals, withdrawn from the community of the family. And that's the same for a parish, isn't it? A parish community, that there has to be a certain amount of caring for needs. We think of the elderly, we think of those with disabilities, we think of different situations, and equally, you know, sharing our lives, that we're a people together. We're good company for each other. You know, those sort of things. You know, and we've changed from being a family where we had so many priests and sisters that so much was in their hands, they were available full time. We've changed to a situation where we don't have those full-time people, and it's either, you know, it's volunteers and it's core. And in the last 10 years, 15 years, we've done huge change in terms of, if you look at the role of the secretary and what's, you know, the service secretaries are provided to the parish community. And I suppose that was pretty much provided by the priest before that. And there's nothing priestly about it. You know, there's something wonderfully Christian about it. It's a vital service. So that gives you a feel for, you know, the change and like what we're becoming with so few priests is what other parts of the world have been always. It's what Africa has been always, that the laity have been hugely involved, you know, and genuinely co-responsible with the priest. So, you know, that's where we're heading. And to say within the family, you know, the services are provided within the family, families don't bring in people from outside to do huge number to do the basics. I think it just gives us that sense of, you know, the change. And other countries, it's been central already. For us, it's the future, and it involves the laity, and it involves, for the most part, volunteers. You know, can we generate the finance to pay people full time? How many can we afford to pay? Volunteers will always be huge. You know, I think that's, you know, it's the way of looking at it. They say volunteers are scarce, and they are. They say people won't volunteer, and it's hard to get volunteers among adults, because especially now with people having their children in their 30s, you know, they're from 30s to 50, they have children, and they're hugely committed time-wise to their home and to their children. But at the same time, I always think, you know, we look to the GAA, you know, and there's probably 10 times as much service and work needed in a GAA club every week as there is needed in the parish. And the officers are there. Look at all the officers in the GAA, you know, the finances looked after, everything, you know, keeping the grounds in order. There's fixture lists, there's making sure members are paid up, there's safeguarding, you know, there's providing transport, there's, let's say, ringing in results and moving on to the next stage. There's representing on committees, representing on the county group. You know, and people get involved in the GAA, and quite quickly they're officers, and they know their job and they get on with it. You know, and so I think that's where I'd look to for hope and say volunteers are possible. And similarly in the church. And the course we talk about, the training we talk about, is to get that overview of church and see where each role fits in. You know, the course gives us that sense of what church is, sense of what the community is, sense of what parish community life is about, to get a shared vision of that, and then we work within it. You know, so this, like, I think the image of family is good, and the image of change is good. You know, it will be different. You know, but different isn't better or worse. I think too often when we talk of change, and when we talk about change, we jump to, is it better or is it worse? We take sides. You know, the reality is with every change that there's positives and negatives. You know, and it'll be the same with us as church too. You know, and it surely is a positive that, you know, that the laity must take the rightful place in terms of responsibility and co-responsibility in the church. You know, so I said, maybe you might be asking a lot of questions about this, and feel free to put in questions about this too, and feel free to contradict me. But just to give some sense of that. And maybe it's a good coincidence that what we're doing now will parallel synodality. You know, and if you look at this, the actual, the logo or the icon for synodality, it has the bishop and it has the priest in the middle of the group going forward together. That's a good image of church. You know, the group, the people of the parish going forward together, living life together. You know, and synodality is saying that everyone is entitled to be part of the conversation. Every voice matters. You know, it says we go forward in conversation, we go forward dialoguing. You know, listening to each other. It's an interesting phrase to use that say, too often we listen to respond, rather than that we listen to actually try to appreciate what the person is saying, where they're coming from. You know, what are the circumstances they see as important that leads them to this conclusion? You know, that we listen just to respond or to, you know, to counter their arguments. But it's interesting what to say. We should listen to appreciate and to see where the person is coming from, to understand why they say that, understand the reasoning and what they're saying. And if we do that, we come closer together, we journey together. So just that image of family, and it's all families are different, and family life is different in Africa to here. So too, you know, the family of the church, family life is different. And just as a child with great disabilities born to a family shapes how the family is, so too, when we had tons of priests, you know, and sisters and religious, you know, that had a say in the shape we were. And now, when we haven't, you know, we have a challenge to continue to have sufficient priests for the sacraments. We have a challenge to have sufficient priests for the Eucharist, etc. There's great challenges there. But at the same time, you can see how the family that the church is in our diocese will be shaped, you know, by us having fewer and fewer priests. You know, and the final thing on that, you know, the time is now. You know, that, and I wonder how many would it be? Probably it is close on half of our priests are over 64, 65. So there's no point in thinking we'd be in a better position to make to adapt, to develop, you know, in 5 years' time, when that group are either half of them are retired and the other half are between 70 and 75. You know, the time is now. And I said, it's not because we haven't priests, you know, that a church is by virtue of baptism. You know, my basic dignity as a Christian is my baptism, confirmation, and Eucharist. That's what made me a full member of the people of God. You know, after that, being a priest, being a bishop, being a permanent deacon, you know, is a particular role of service. But just as, you know, the mammy and the daddy and the baby and the 6-year-old child are equal family members, so too, by virtue of baptism, we're equal in the church. You know, and the time is now in Ireland, and it affects every single diocese in Ireland. Maybe, you know, where we're at now, maybe other dioceses mightn't be there for 5 years' time in terms of they have a slightly more priests than we have at the moment. They're slightly better off in terms of priest numbers, but in 5 years' time to be where we are today. But, you know, we are what we are, the people of God, under God our Father, you know, in communion with Christ. We are what we are through baptism, confirmation, and the Eucharist. You know, and that's, you know, we're all equal members of the family. We all can play our part, and we're all called by God to play our part. I'm a little disappointed, only 4 questions in yet, only 2 extra added, but I've said enough. I'm just trying to give that overview of where we're going and trying to understand it. But the course is, I think the main thrust of the course is to give us a real feel for church and for scripture and for prayer and for the work of the Holy Spirit. You know, because in all of this, we trust that we journey with God. And the more we journey together, the more we can trust the Holy Spirit at work in us. Where 2 or 3 are gathered in my name, there am I in the midst of them.
So somebody has asked, is this model of lay ministry operating in any other diocese? And it is. It has begun in the diocese of Killaloe and also in the diocese of Limerick. And it's very new. So it's something that we will be learning together and developing together. And somebody else has asked, is it a 7-year commitment? No, the 2 years of training is part of that commitment of the 5 years. So that keeps going. And Ger, I might bring that question to you.
Yes.
Your images.
Yeah, the image, just the image on the second model, the model about the church being a faith community. The purpose of the image really was to emphasize the involvement of all the lay faithful, that it all must be involved if we're going to have vibrant faith communities into the future. Of course, the priest has a central role to play in the parish and the pastoral area, the sacramental role and the leadership role. So, but the diagram itself was about really trying to emphasize that all the baptized and all the faithful have a role and responsibility as well. There's another question there, Francis, about...
There is indeed. Is there a predefined list of ministries? No. That will be explored as we work with the individuals who come forward from pastoral areas, and also the groups in the pastoral areas who indicate to us what are the local needs. There's no point, as they say, bringing coal to Newcastle. So it's according to what the needs will be locally. And then somebody has said they'd love to give something back. And really, that has been the experience of the Diocese of Killaloe and Limerick, that it's people who are coming forward who say, look, I actually have a little bit more space or time on my hands at the moment, and I'd love to give something back from all that I have received in life. Is there another question there?
Where will the training take place?
The training will take place here in the Diocese of Kerry. So some of it will take place online, and some of it will take place, face to face. Yeah. I suppose for a lot of the skills training, you really need to be in a group and getting to know one another and kind of trying things out and seeing what works well together. For some of the training that is more maybe reflective, or maybe stuff that needs to be read or just thought about before it's explored, that can be done online. Conversation has happened with the priest council here in the diocese, with the vicars forain here in the diocese, with all the area pastoral councils, with the diocesan pastoral council here in the diocese. So this is not landing into clergy from nowhere. This is a conversation that's been ongoing with them in terms of how do we move forward as a church in this changed time.
Just a question about the training program. Will there be assignments, and will people be graded?
There are assignments, but the assignments are not like essays. So it's really, I suppose, you're learning about something to use for something. So, sometimes in school we were learning things and it seemed like we just needed to have the answers at the end of the day and write them on our exam paper. But this really is about exploring different aspects of our faith, because when you're in ministry, those sort of things will come up. So it might be exploring something about who Jesus is, because the Jesus presented to the children in the Grow in Love program, being aware of that Jesus and the images that the kids would be familiar with might be very different to if you're exploring or if you're supporting older people who are in nursing homes or bedridden at home or whatever, and you're bringing communion. So it'll be according to the needs of each one. In terms of graded, they're graded, I think, in a general sense. So it's not a pass and a fail. It really is about the ministry rather than the knowledge base. That the knowledge is in virtue of, being more able to minister.
Yeah, it's adult learning, isn't it?
It's adult learning. It absolutely is. And we come with so much already that sometimes what you're doing is unpacking some of what you know and almost revisiting it and knowing it anew.
That's it, Francis.
Are we good on questions?
Two things I'd say there. The one is, that surely this is happening all over Ireland, all over England, all over Europe. They have so few priests. If they haven't this, how can they have parish life?
Well, actually, you're right, Bishop Ray. In Europe, they've had this, or a form of lay ministry of different sorts for 50 years.
Yes.
Really since Vatican II. I lived briefly in France, and all the faith formation for adults, for young people, all the preparation for the sacraments, pastoral care, all that was being done by lay people back then. I think if you look even in our own diocese, we have chaplains in the hospital, lay chaplains in the hospital, lay chaplains in school, where once we might have had clergy, again, bringing their own gifts to that particular ministry. So it's an ongoing conversation. I suppose maybe just it would be really important from this evening that people would bring with them a sense of the ministry, a sense of exploring further, telling people about it, and encouraging those who might have an interest to express their interest, and then we can explore further.